So welcome everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Martha Russell. So Martha did her PhD in Minnesota on analyzing policies in higher education. Since then, her career path took her to many industries: agriculture, information technology, electronics, and so forth. And finally, she's now here at Stanford. She is the executive director of mediaX, and in that capacity she's actually fostering relationships between industry and interdisciplinary research here at Stanford. So for example, through organizing seminar series like this, she has a great part in making all of this happening, but also raising seed funds to bring together researchers within Stanford and then coupling them with outside business people. And she's also a senior research fellow at the H-Star Institute here. She said this is more like a pastime. She's doing this in evenings and weekends. But that's what she wants to talk about today, about her research in the area of networking, games, and education.
Thank you, Ingmar. And with a little correction, I have to say that mediaX has not organized these seminars, although we're very proud to support them. One of the pleasures that I have is talking with Stanford's very bright professors, established and new, and listening to the things that they want to do. And from time to time, I have an opportunity to say yes. And that is actually, it's Ingmar's leadership in putting together the seminar series that began in the winter and now is continuing into the spring. So I am grateful to you. But I'm very happy to be with you today and to talk about some research that I do that I find so fun and compelling that as we've been talking about how people get into games, end up doing it in the evenings and weekends. It is driven, I think, by my interest in relationships as the conduits for information, talent, and financial resources, and how those contribute to the structure and the evolution of innovation ecosystems. We're looking at many changes ahead, and when we have, by 2050, 9 billion inhabitants on the planet, I believe that interactive media and games are going to play a role in helping us to create the future that we want to have then. So today I want to share some context and trends that are a part of my questions that have to do with games and educational technologies that take a perspective on resource networks for emerging businesses that also allow us to have some windows into market trends. And I'll conclude with a request and an invitation. So just to begin the context, I can say that for a long time, teachers have been using interactive tools and engaging exercises to get people's attention and help them learn. And over a period of years, instructors have converted those materials into multimedia materials, and then they converted that multimedia into PowerPoint and then into web pages. And so we're very much in continuation of this. But we find ourselves now with education and technologies almost being a requirement for some classrooms. And as people are using, young students and college students and adult students using technologies at home, they want to bring those into the classroom, and they're saying, why can't I keep using? Why can't I be on my iPad? I want to be on my mobile device during the class. And some important innovations in how the classroom activities take place have begun incorporating these. For example, taking the content of class and turning it into a game that students are playing, as in this case with Jeopardy. Moved to the elementary schools, and children wanted to begin using them. The parents, the teachers, the school boards have begun equipping the students with them. For example, this fourth grader who is preparing a reflection exercise, who is going to explain the technology that she's learned and use that as a part of her demonstration. Or this group in which an hour of code is in some schools becoming a requirement for students, that one of the abilities that students must have is the ability to understand and navigate around code. Superintendents are taking positions saying, you know, it is the educational technology that is going to liberate people in the future, and students must learn how to use the technology as well as to learn content from the technology. And of course the iPad, which has become a global phenomenon, reaching around the world and into classes of all levels. So games have become a part of this, and the mandate for fun in an era in which we have a competition for attention and the opportunity to engage by making something personally relevant, by creating an interactive experience, has fueled many startups and has been sparking alliances, and that's part of my interest, among sometimes unlikely partners. We have to ask, what is next? And for those of you who are interested in stepping up to the horizon and getting a peek over, I highly recommend this report written by Professor Roy P. on education's digital future, how transformed learning will be powered by technology. Now, he identifies a couple of opportunities. One is the opportunity for personal learning at scale. And so this goes beyond the content. It is very much a technology opportunity in which the always-on networked world optimizes learning at a variety of levels of difficulty and with a variety of different types of assistance. In order to do that, the technology needs to be in place to map the dependency relationships in the learning content and the individuals learning with each other, to be able to do advanced metadata tagging, to have recommendation engines that support all of the content that's available, to develop digital assistance agents, feedback systems, and to understand how to manage and curate and promote, enable, empower identity and relationships in a technology-enhanced learning process. So personalized learning at scale, big opportunity. The other opportunity that's identified by Roy P.'s report on the future is multimodal learning. What does this mean? It means that we've got, we are understanding increasingly about immersion, about experience, and about how interaction science and technology can contribute insights to the way that we develop those learning experiences. We're understanding about sensory modalities, the tactile, the visual, the auditory, and how to play those senses together. We're understanding how to integrate diverse types of data from sensor streams, from tracking individual play on a system or in a content, and to do pattern detection in that massive data in order to present the next best learning opportunity and the next best interactive context to the student. So this is rich, rich science and technology that the new frontiers for education and games, interactive experiences, are leading us to. We see many of these happening in current classes. Looking at the environment of a learner in which they might have a computer screen, an iPad, a phone, as well as other visual aids around in their context, gives us a clue about the multimodal information that students can be attending to, but it helps us to understand that we have questions about the layers of information that will be part of learning experiences. The online learning that Stanford has taken a strong leadership role and has begun to, I think in many cases, and certainly Keith Devlin's class is an example, to begin experimenting with the way that information is presented, the way that learners are enabled to participate in the instruction as well as with each other, And in this virtual classroom in which I gave a presentation recently, in which we enter in 3 dimension, in avatar, into a class and are interacting with people actually from around the world together in a class sharing information. So it's, the opportunity is vast, the business opportunity as well as the learning opportunity. And the, both in terms of educational technology and in terms of the business of games. Now, the estimates of the value of the business opportunity vary, so I'm not even going to say a number, except to say that all of the estimates give it as a big number, and they give it as a number that is growing rapidly. Some say that it's growing at the point of 20–25% per year as a business opportunity. Generally, there's agreement that about a half, 2/3 to a half of that opportunity is in the United States, but that may change as some of the developing economies take a stronger role in educating their workforce and using educational technologies and games for jobs that range from being a surgeon to being on the factory floor. So in the evolution of the new technologies, the businesses that are being created to make them available, the games that are layered on top of them to make them fun and engaging, we see a number of relationships that are part of a structure of a network, and that's where I want to focus some of my comments today. Relationships matter. They are the conduits, I think, of the exchange of information, of talent, and of financial resources. And we can look at the relationship from a company to a company. Here I'm showing the companies in red. That might be an acquisition, a deal, or an alliance. We can look at the relationships of a financing organization to a company. Might be an angel, an investor, financial organization, and look at the relationship of the individuals to the company. And here that individual, I'm looking at the leadership role. So these are founders, they're people at the C-level, and they're people on the boards of advisors. And if we look at the relationships across people in companies, with other companies and with their financial organizations, we see the structure of an innovation ecosystem. These networks of relationships are sustained over a period of time, and in those relationships, the creation of a shared meaning of what the future is going to be like, of shared investment, cooperative investment, and alignment on the bets and the risk-taking that will take place. And this is the structure, I think, of a relationship. It's human network that underlies the business ecosystems. I work with a very smart team of people, and as Ingmar said, a lot of this I do in the evenings and weekends, and because some of them are in Europe, some of them are in Asia, it works out pretty well that we kind of have 3 work cycles in one 24-hour period as we go around the clock. Raul Basoli at Georgia Tech, Camila Yu in Shanghai, Yuka Hutamaki at the University of Tampere University of Technology, Kaisa Still at VTT in Finland, and Neil Rubens at the University of Electrocommunications in Tokyo. And so we go out to the web and look for information about these relationships of people to the companies, of companies to each other, and of financing organizations to the companies. And there's a lot of this data that's out there. We have used some curated data sets, such as the SDC data set from the Thomson Reuters. That's an excellent source of information for deals and alliances as they have been disclosed in SEC filings. But we also go to social media. We go to socially curated data sites. We scrape information and have aggregated it together to allow both analysis and visualizations, because these relationships are very complex, and to present tables of numbers, it's hard to really get an idea of what's happening. Here's an example, for example, of looking at a number of social media sources that are openly available on the web out there for the scraping for Udemy, for example. So once we have the data and we analyze it, our goal is to visualize it in order to improve the sense-making opportunities. We make some pretty pictures, but making the pictures is not the goal. The goal is to activate the visual, with a visual perception, some of the connections that can be understood and the insights that can be developed from that. And so we use a data frame theory that essentially has an iterative element to it. It provides an overview, we adjust, we detect the patterns, we match mental models, and then we start it all over again. You may know the song Bolero by Ravel. I'm a flute player, I'm not that much of a singer, but it goes da 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 da, and pretty soon other instruments come in, but they have that same pattern. And in music, that's called ostinato. It's a musical term for that pattern. So we've borrowed that term to describe the method that we use in collecting the data, in analyzing the data, in identifying the metrics that are related to the question that brings us in, and to iterating on that frame, and to sense-making and storytelling from that, which often feeds back into the beginning of the process again. And the same data, looked at from different perspectives, can tell different stories. So sometimes we look at this data, and we have about 130,000 companies internationally in our data set. We look at it from the standpoint of sectors. Sometimes we look at the role of universities in that. Sometimes we're interested in who the investors are, and we look at their role in sharing investment, sharing the risk in new sectors. And sometimes we're interested in individuals. And so with each of the nodes that you will see, the blue indicating individuals, the red indicating companies, the green indicating, what's the green? Finance, money, of course, and the purple indicating universities. We ask us, well, what does the data tell us about the relational capital in the innovation ecosystems of games for learning? And one of the things that it tells us is that educational technology relates to many sectors. If you look at the way that companies describe themselves and use those as terms to do some word analyses on the companies, and looking across companies that identify themselves, for example, in the games or in the education space, we can identify shared sector participation. And in educational technologies, the companies that call themselves educational technology companies are very likely, are most likely to be software, second likely web. The games and video is the third most likely component to be associated with education technology, consulting the fourth, and e-commerce the fifth. Another thing that we see is that things are changing in the educational technology. And I'll show you here, because we've been collecting this data since 2010. I wish this showed up just a little bit better, but you can see, if you squint, a number of nodes that looks like a sprinkling. There are a few nodes at the center that are connected, a couple of green nodes in a sea of small red nodes. And the size of the node here is proportional to the number of connections that it has. So if you see some green nodes in the center that are a little bit larger, that would signify that they have made investments in a couple of companies that are shown in red. Or if you were to see a large red there, and I think that's 500, that specific node, you would see that they have relationships with a number of companies. So this was 2011. We had 1,800 nodes that included the financing organizations and the companies that identified themselves with education of some kind. Well, we wondered, what would the future be like? And one way to see that in a relationship context is to say, all right, for each node that was identified in 2011 as being associated with education, we'll go out one step from the relationships that they have. So if the company was identified as an education technology company and its board members then were connected with other companies, then we can go out one step and bring in those individuals, bring in those financing organizations or those other companies that the financing organizations here have been supporting. Because we make the assumption that in the next couple of years, the deals are probably going to be done with people that you know now, or people that know the people that you know. And so we did that. And in 2011, this is what we saw, that if you go out one step from those 1,800 nodes to start with, you reached over 9,000 nodes. And by the colors, you can see the influence that, the potential influence that key individuals have. They are the blue. And you can see the green hue down here about 8 o'clock, that there are a number of financing organizations that might come to play. Fast forward to 2014, and you see, in fact, that this structure of the education technology industry, let's call it our sector, looks quite different from 2011. And we might have predicted by looking at that one step out that, in fact, there was going to be growth and that this was a great opportunity. So one of the things that the data tells us about educational technology and games is that the velocity of capital into the sector has increased. And we can also see that the growth comes from new companies. And so looking at startups in particular in education technology, we see a vast number, and this is from 2014, a vast number of new companies, startups. Here we don't show the green because they're funded by angels and are getting started with, this is before they get venture funding. But we see a number, and if you remember, the purple indicates the educational institution. We see a number of very prominent educational institutions playing here. And they do, in fact, play a very important role in the development of education technology and games. It is certainly possible to start up a new company without being affiliated with a university. But the education institutions play a central role. We've looked at this before I show you the role that they play in educational technology and games. I'll go more broadly and say that we have looked at the patterns, the structure of relationships that alumni from universities known for their innovation have in their new company development. And I can show you this, and I'll tell you that this reflects the innovation ecosystem of MIT. MIT is in the center. The blue nodes are alums of MIT, and the red nodes are companies that have been founded or for which the MIT alums are on the boards, or for which they are, MIT alums are the directors.
Are these all companies or technology companies specifically?
These are all companies. So I'm going broad here for a minute. And I can show you what it looks like if you look at Berkeley's profile. I can show you Harvard. We're going to get a sense of the strength of the law school, of people at the leadership level that are cultivated there. And you know which one I'm going to show you next. But I want to prepare you for the fact that it is qualitatively and quantitatively different. This is Stanford. And you can see the Stanford DNA here in the innovation ecosystem that is built on dense networks of people working together, starting more than one company, and helping each other with the companies that they start. So it plays a central role. And if we look at the role that universities play in education technology and in games, it's very interesting. This is from 2014 data, and over here I'm showing education technologies. You saw this before in the startups that I showed you. And here I'm showing games. And one of the things that's quite interesting is, to me, when I first saw this, was to see that educational technologies in terms of startups in 2014 were about as strong, maybe a little bit stronger than games as a sector. But looking at the importance of the links to the universities, you can't help but notice that a lot of what is going on in this area is happening right here. In both the education and in the games, Stanford University stands at the top. Berkeley is a player in both. MIT, strong player, Carnegie Mellon, Harvard in games, and NYU and USC, University of California, LA, in education technologies. So it matters. And just summing this, I would say that we can see that a web of relationships at leadership levels, again, these are founders, board members, and chief C-level folks, is critical in the financing roles of growth and startup companies. The patterns of deals and alliances among companies and their ecosystem partners reveal how talent flows, how money flows, how information flows. And you frequently have employees going from one company to another company because they know someone in both companies. These are the relationships that create the infrastructure. Educational technology and games cross many sectors. As I have shown you these particular graphs, I have drawn the data out of our data source through searching for education or for games. But when we do that, we can also look at a word analysis of the way that companies describe themselves, what they do, who they serve. And in that word analysis can identify the way that they see themselves addressing the market. And I would like to share with you, this has not been published, many of the other things that I've shown you have, some of the new work that we have been doing in terms of looking at the sectors. And so let me start first by, and this is a market focus. In other words, we are harvesting the terms that companies use to describe what they do and using that as a word analysis to reflect the markets that they're addressing. And this is a market focus of startups in education. Again, the size is inflated by the number of companies that are using that term to describe what they do. So you see university students, big. K through 12 education, big. Somebody mentioned training, recruiting, edutainment, enterprise software. All of the terms aren't on here. It would be impossible to read it, just maybe it's the 25 or so top terms. But this is the way that, and mobile, e-commerce, and software as service become very important. Now, we can kind of imagine that we were zooming. I have taken still shots, but this is an interactive data set, and it's possible to kind of click your way through that. And if any of you have an interest in following a topic of interest, I would be glad to sit with you and do that with you. But let's take it from the standpoint of games. And what we see is that the startup companies that are emerging in the game sector describe themselves in terms of mobile games, video games, social games, social media, gamification, casual games, educational games, and education are in the mix of the way that startup game companies are talking about the work that they do, the markets, what they offer, and the markets that they serve. Let's combine those and look at education and games together. And here we see that the K through 12 identification becomes strong, that edutainment is strong, but mobile games and mobile itself as two different ways, but related in terms of how companies describe what they're doing. Video games, language learning. This is strong enough to pop up to the top of parenting. Teaching STEM concepts now makes the map. And social media. Technical continuing education also rises up to the top. Let's drill into edutainment and see what that looks like. And that is interesting because it emphasizes kids. K through 12 pops out there, social media, digital, mobile. The e-commerce is kind of interesting. So we can do this on a number of terms. Here's music education. Companies, startup companies that are in education and in games that describe what they are doing as music education are targeting musicians, mobile, music services, music instruments. They're using social media and they're using games. This one is interesting to me, STEM education. And one of the reasons that it's interesting to me is it's not happy, I think. It's kind of small in the whole sphere of educational technology and games. It's concerningly small, but it does have robotics in it. It has an emphasis toward the teachers, digital media, mobile. You see some emphasis on special areas, and here's one in clean technology that rises up to the top. And because I'm interested in personalization, I wanted to look into the education personalization filter. This, I think, is quite interesting because you see that discovery is a key element, that there is an element of publishing, information services, software as a service, and of course big data and mobile are key descriptors that startup companies in the personalizing education space. Digging further into personalization, I think we're kind of coming out into another era of the network, but you can see the social media. Now you see some things in addition to education and games coming out, because you've got things like predictive analytics, reviews and recommendations. You've got fashion that's a part of it, sales and marketing. The analytics become very interesting as you get this personalization focus on it. So there are many ways to take a look at this information, but I think of key interest is that in the personal education and game sector, the ecosystem that is developing in that includes the companies that are emerging for the computing platform. It includes the companies that are emerging for human behavior, for content, for the financial value. It includes the technology infrastructure and support, the service operations, and the computing hardware. And a lot of that is wireless. And this is recent data from just March now, but looking at the way that companies in this wireless space are describing what they do. sensors and mobile, the Internet of Things, consumer electronics. So in thinking about the future and kind of making the what if education games, what if personalization, I think this is on the next side of the what if sensors and wireless and what if sensors. And here we see that in the area of sensors that education in fact does show itself, that we've got healthcare, medical devices, sports, consumer electronics, agriculture, hardware, and these may in fact be opportunities for the education technology and the games in the future. So I think in terms of the games in learning, it's important to have fun. And the competition for attention really requires delivering fun. The mandate for fun has spread like wildfire across many sectors. And some of the alliances are among seemingly unlikely partners. But one thing is for sure, there is no pause button. And so we ask, what's next? I encourage you to read the Education's Digital Future. And out of that, I would encourage you to think about the personal relevance as an opportunity, because the online services and interactive experiences contain an embedded code. This code guides the operations and the instructions, and as people use the apps and the system, they develop relationships with those systems, and bonds are created with the devices, with the content, and identity is shaped across the whole spectrum of education, of commerce, and entertainment, and these are the fields that mediaX focuses on. Context drives the meaning. And so whether someone is in a classroom or in a leisure environment, recreational environment, or at home, the context for their learning probably has a strong determinant on how they will be receptive to the content, how they will engage, and their intention, their aspirations for themselves or for the next activity that can be translated into the learning opportunity is really what drives the value of the experience for them. We know from work that has been done here at Stanford that when people interact with technologies, they interact with the technologies as if they were people. And so the semantics of that interaction and the integration of those semantics produce an environment in which the digital self is interacting with the imagined other. The value exchange, both virtual and physical, is something that we are just on the threshold of understanding. The nanofinance, the exchange of attention for a service. But one thing not to lose sight of is the big lie. What is the big lie? I have read the terms of service, and I agree, I accept. So in all these things that we're talking about, the big lie exists. And why is that important? To me, it's important because I care about people. And I think that we have a new algorithm in this era, and part of that algorithm is that there's no forgetting. We don't understand forever. But some of the data that's collected that tracks personal activities may in fact have a forever component to it. And while we have a Bill of Rights for the physical world, we don't yet have one for the virtual world. And I think we need to protect those rights, because tied into those rights are a person's identity and the opportunity to enable, to empower, or to constrain human potential. So a couple weeks ago at the mediaX 2015 conference, One of the speakers, Monica Lamb, talked about a concept that I love, and it is that we may be at the dawn of the privacy economy. So this is probably one of those arenas, that will come into education technology and games. Her company development called Omelette is on the way, but there are other activities that are underway, and some of you know the Creative Commons, which originated here at Stanford. The Customer Commons is a program growing out of MIT, which will create for this complex terms of service issue very easy to understand icons that will give people and the companies that use them an easy way to identify how what they're doing will be tracked and how it will be shared. So we're at the dawn, I think, of a privacy economy. We're at the dawn of another thing, and that is new user ecosystems. Many of us are accustomed to thinking of K through 12 education, or splitting K through 12 up, or splitting higher education into continuing education, or socioeconomic classifications of people that support marketing. But I think we're at a new place in our ability to understand people, understand intention, and to support that. Because people organize themselves, and they can do this easily in social media, as well as physically in communities. They organize themselves by ideas that they share, by inspiration. People are inspired by the same thing, by the opportunities that they see, by how fast they want to change, by who they trust, by the technologies that they have available, and by how they have fun. This is relevant for interactive media and games. It's relevant because digital footprints are kept forever. Their use and meaning is going to be influenced internationally in different ways by culture, by politics, and by business models. But as the games are developed, as the tools are developed, rights and permission are baked into the code. During the design process, during the integration process as it's priced, in the distribution process. And my invitation to you, my appeal, is that those of you who are developing education technologies and games will design and develop with human rights and empowerment as guiding principles. Enable the stories and build the networks for the future that we want to be in.